at what point did you decide to write this book about your father?
He sort of decided for me because he was writing it. He was writing a sort of grandiose memoir of sorts, and he developed Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease, which is a really nasty neurodegenerative disease that um, pretty rapidly takes away your faculties and your cognitive abilities. And so, as he was sort of laying dying there of that, he implored me and made me promise him that I would finish it for him. And so I did. It took a lot of years, but I morphed it into something more approachable to a general readership because if I hadn't, it would be 4 times as long as it is now. So we really focused on the mental health aspect and his early life, and so he asked me to do that as he was dying to finish his book, and I made good on that promise.
That's wonderful. Do you think that your father's experiences impacted your understanding of mental health influence and your advocacy efforts?
It really showed me a totally different side of him that I didn't know about. My family, his direct family and his extended family didn't know about. It showed us how vulnerable he was and how precarious his existence was for decades of his life, when we thought he was sort of this Superman father, infallible leader figure. And that, I knew it before, but it really cemented for me how, even despite all outward appearances, it's really hard to know what's going on with somebody, especially somebody with severe mental illness, and um, it showed that it's you just have to give people some grace, and you have to um, really understand what they're dealing with before you make a full impression of them. Because my impression of my dad really changed after I read this, because I knew I knew he had this disease, but I never really fully understood the extent of how much it tormented him, and uh, how much angst he had in his life, and uh, how really precarious his life was for 20 years.
Yeah.
And so, uh, it just shows you that until you really know somebody, you have to give them some grace to figure out what they've dealt with.
Yeah.
Write back and forth with at least 10 people every day about the book and how it relates to their lives. So don't be afraid to reach out.
Tell me a little bit about like your father's work here and maybe specifically at UWSP. I looked up some of his information, but it would be nice to hear coming from you.
Right. My dad taught at UWSP for 20 some years, I think 27 or something like that. In the CNR, the College of Natural Resources, he taught resource management, lake stewardship, forest stewardship, and he became a pretty well-known person at the university and conservation circles, and that's sort of the hallmark department at UWSP.
Okay.
Um, and he had a few administrative roles,
Okay.
but he also was a UW Extension liaison for UWSP, but the whole University of Wisconsin system. So he went all over the world to establish connections with other universities, with planning departments, with governments. So that was really cool because we often went with him.
Oh,
Um,
that's nice.
so he
That's
had
great.
his home base at UWSP, but his teaching and work sort of emanated out to the whole whole world
That's
in that way. Yeah.
that's great.